Hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Bye.
Bye.
Say bye. All
Bye.
right.
Bye.
Oh, okay, good job. All right. Today we are going to end the second chapter of Ruth. So we are going to be in Ruth chapter 2 verses 17 through 23. We are halfway through this book. We have 2 more chapters to go, and I'll go on and tell you next week we're going to do verses 1 through 5 of chapter 3. So we will pick up where we left off last week. And Ruth was gleaning in the field, and we know that Boaz came out and told her that she was to get water from his guys, his servants, his workers, and he told the workers to leave some of the good stuff out in the field and plus she ate dinner with him. So this is where we pick up in verses 17. So she gleaned in the field until evening, and of course they're talking about Ruth. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I worked today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest." And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young woman of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So we see here kind of more of what happens in the field. We see the end of the story, so to speak, that we had said, she went, she was gleaning, Boaz called her in to eat, so she went back out, and now she's finished gathering up all the barley that she needs or that she can get for that day. Who knows? The sun may be going down. It may be dark. She's got to get home. Whatever way it is, it may be at the end of the day. I don't know. But she's gathered what she needs. And then we see, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but I look at it as a mother-daughter relationship, the mother and daughter conversation. Where have you been? Who did you see? What did you do? But we'll get to that in just a minute. But in verse 17, we see that Ruth gathered about an ephah of barley. We do not know exactly how much an ephah is, but we do know there's enough food to feed her and Naomi for several days. So this tells us something else about Ruth, is she wasn't just thinking about the here and now, I just need to gather enough for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for today. She wasn't just thinking about tomorrow. She, I don't want to say overexerted herself, but she went above and beyond. She didn't just gather for that day. She gathered for several days. And that is another unusual thing that we find. And Ruth is full of unusual things, but it was very unusual for a person to gather this much barley in one day. It was almost unheard of. It's just something that wasn't done. And it was not an easy task. And I find myself thinking, she just has this basket that she's carrying on her hip and all this barley's laying on the ground and she's just picking it up and putting it in the basket. No, there was a process they had to go through. Cutting it down. I don't really know all about it, but taking out the bad stuff, keeping the good stuff. I mean, it was not just a grab and go thing. There was a lot to it. And for her to not only have enough for that day or maybe the next day, for several days, again, that shows her dedication, her hard work. So not only does Ruth get a pretty good basket full, she has to carry it home. So she's got to have strength. There is no male to carry it for her. So she's hot. She's tired. Even though it's spring, March, April, it's hot. You're in the sun. you're beat down, you're tired, you've been out in the field all day, and now you've got this basket that you've got to take home and you've got to carry home. And it was probably pretty heavy. When I was studying for this, I read where some scholars think that Ruth may have gathered enough food for 5 to 7 days in this basket. So we're not talking about a basket that's 3/4 of the way full, a quarter full, half full. We're talking probably over the top, as much as she could push down in it, as much as she could carry. So it's going to be heavy. So we got to think about that for a moment. If she could do that in just one day, if she could gather enough food for a week, let's just say a week, 5 to 7 days is a typical, what we say, either Monday through Friday or Sunday to Sunday. So let's just say 1 week she gathered that in one basket in one day. What could she do in 6 or 7 weeks? And you're thinking, okay, what 7 weeks have to do with it? Well, 7 weeks is the typical harvest period. And we see last week that she shows up at the beginning of harvest. We noticed a couple weeks ago that Ruth and Naomi came back at harvest time, and we talked about how God's hand was in that. So this is just the beginning of harvest. We're in week 1 of harvest. So we've got 6 more weeks to go. If she continued to gather a basket full that she gathered on this particular day, which was enough for 1 week, how much food would she have at the end of 7 weeks? She'd have quite a bit. She would have enough to probably get her and Naomi through the rest of the year, definitely for several months. So again, she's thinking ahead. She's thinking, okay, not just the here and now, I just need to get food for the day. She's thinking, hey, he's offered this field, he's offered me this barley, I'm going to not take advantage, but I'm going to get as much as I need. He told me to get as much as I need, and I'm going to get enough for us. And that's another thing. She didn't just think of her, she thought of Naomi too. She could have said, well, Naomi, you didn't go out and work in this field, and you aren't paying me for it, and you aren't doing anything for me. I went and did all this hard work. I'm the one who became friends with this man. And yet she didn't. She gathered enough for both of them, which I think we all would do too. That's what a typical person in a household does. When I go to the grocery store, I don't just buy food for myself. I buy food for my kids and my husband. We buy food enough for everybody, not just for myself. And I'm just saying that she was also thinking of Naomi. She didn't just gather for herself, which she easily could have done. I am sure Ruth was tired by the time the day was done. Yet in the end, she knew she was getting food to be able to survive for her and Naomi for the next several months. Again, we see Naomi is taken care of. It's just Ruth has promised to stay by her side. Ruth has promised to take care of her, never to leave her. And we see Ruth fulfilling this promise. In verse 19, we see the shock in Naomi's voice when Ruth gets home. She sees all that Ruth has gathered, and she says, 1, where have you gleaned? 2, where have you worked? And 3, may God bless the man who is so kind to you. And again, by the reaction of Naomi, this was not a typical day's earnings. This was not what Naomi was expecting. This was not usual. I mean, it was just... nothing about this was typical. And most people would not have had that much barley in one day. 1, they wouldn't have worked that hard. 2, they would have quit. 3, they just wouldn't have the motivation to do all that unless they weren't planning on going back. Now, if it was a one-time thing, of course, you're going to get as much as you want, as much as you need, maybe more than what you need because you're not going to come back. But as we will see later, Ruth's going to come back. And she's going to come back every day. So again, just a totally unusual situation. And when Naomi is done questioning Ruth, Ruth tells her answers. Ruth answers every question. And she says that Boaz was the one responsible. It was his field, and he was looking out for her. And we see in verse 20 that Naomi tells Ruth that Boaz is a relative of theirs and one of the redeemers. So when she says this, we see a small glimpse of hope in Naomi. We kind of see a turnaround. We've been all doom and gloom. God's against me. My life is horrible. And now what does she say? This is one of our redeemers. Bless this man. He cares for the living and the dead. He knows our story, and he's not talking about us. He's not shunning us. He's helping us. So we are seeing that right now in this moment, Naomi is not all doom and gloom. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So maybe Naomi begins to think, oh, well, we might just make it. This might just work out. And all it took was for a relative to show that he cared. And all Boaz did, yes, he may have other intentions, and we'll see that later on. But right now, he saw Ruth. He was attracted to her. But he went, as we've talked last week, above and beyond what a person would have ever done for just a poor person in their field. So he just showed a simple act of kindness. And sometimes that all it takes today is for someone to show they care. Caring about someone or showing a small act of kindness could possibly turn someone's life around. And we have always heard, you never know what someone is going through, so always be nice. We see that here. Now, Boaz knew. As soon as they told him that it was Ruth, he knew their history. But by Boaz letting Ruth glean in his field, it showed Naomi that there are some people who still care. Not everybody is bad. There's always that one person, and sometimes it's the person you least expect it to be. And I think that's in this situation. Ruth was just looking for a field to glean. She never dreamed that Boaz would do what he was doing, or what he did for her, and what he was going to continue to do for her. And then before I mention the mother and daughter relationship, I can just see this. I can see the questioning when Ruth comes in. In the next 3 verses, we see the conversation that takes place between Ruth and Naomi. It's truly a mother-daughter relationship. Daughter, Ruth, comes home. Mother, Naomi, wants to know everything that happened. How did you get this? Where did you get it? What were you doing today? What took you so long? How did you get so much? Who helped you? Who were you with? Who did you see? And I thought of when I was growing up, if we went out, we had to ask permission. That's just how we grew up. Mom and Dad needed to know when we were leaving, who we were going with, what we were going to do, when we were going to come home. If there was anybody else that we were going to meet along the way. We needed to know exactly if we were going 2 or 3 places, exactly what 2 or 3 places we were going to, exactly what time we were going to be there, where we were going to end up. I mean, you had to go through a whole list of questions. And buddy, if one of those questions, if you were caught not in one of those places you said you were in major trouble. And it progressively got stricter. I'm not going to say worse, stricter when you got your license. It was who was going to be in the car with you, who are you taking, where are you taking them, why are you taking them. So I just kind of chuckled when I read these verses, because to me that is a typical parent-child relationship. And yes, I know this is a mother-daughter-in-law, but for a moment just think mother-daughter, because I think that's how close. I don't see Naomi looking at Ruth as a daughter-in-law. I see her looking at her as a daughter. And she's questioning, she's wondering, she wants to know everything. And I don't know, I just laughed because I see that, and I can see myself doing that to my daughter and my son. And we still kind of do it. When you make a play date, okay, well, who do you want to play with? Are you going over there, or are they coming over here? Are we meeting them somewhere? What are we going to do? And just this past week, Elizabeth had a play date. And she does the same thing to me. Mama, what time are we leaving? Mama, what are we going to do there? Mama, what time do we have to leave and come home? Mama, are we going to eat? Mama, are we going to do this? So to me, it just kind of brought another element to this story of how close they were. So after the questioning, Ruth tells Naomi that Boaz tells her to come and glean and continue to glean until the harvest is over. So that's something else that's unusual too. You're never asked to come back. You might not go to the same field every day. And yet Boaz tells her, do not go into another field. You come to mine. So Naomi tells Ruth to go. Absolutely go. Do that. Stay close to Boaz's girls. And so she's already seen that Boaz has taken them under their wing. She calls them their redeemer. So she fully trusts Boaz, especially since they are relatives. But she also knows that Boaz has Ruth's best interest in heart, and she knows that Boaz will make sure Ruth does not get hurt. I think this is also a sign of respect. Here Boaz offered Ruth to come in and glean as much as she wanted. And to some extent, I guess, if Ruth never showed up, she'd be considered rude. her name would be ruined. When someone offers you something like this, you don't turn it down. We have Boaz here being extra generous. And if you don't show up, it's almost like you just took advantage of that person. And she doesn't want to do that. So if she just never showed up again, that wouldn't set well with Boaz. I could see Boaz saying, I fed you, I gave you the good crop, I had my workers help you, you didn't have to do it all yourself, I let you drink the servants or my own water, you didn't have to go get it. I could see him being very offended. If someone goes the extra mile for you and you don't come back, you don't return the favor, I could see him being really upset. But we see that Ruth does it. Naomi says, you go. You don't go to any other field. You don't do anything else. You go. You're protected. You've got the Boaz there looking out for you. You stay with him. And plus, Naomi knows that if Ruth keeps going back, that maybe Boaz would continue to pay attention to Ruth. And who knows what would come of that. And we'll find more about that out later. We will find out more about that later in the next 2 chapters. But again, I think it kind of eased Naomi's mind, so to speak, that she knew it was Boaz. Because as we have talked about several times, this family is respected. They're well-to-do. She knows about Boaz. Boaz knows about her. So they know the history. And yet, again, it's family being there for each other. And I think that kind of eases Naomi's mind of, okay, she's not going to some complete stranger's field. And she trusts that Boaz may go a little bit extra to protect her, knowing that she is family. And again, that goes back to the mother-daughter relationship. I think she is going to, like I said, give Ruth a little bit more leeway, maybe not question as much next time, because now she knows who she's with, where she's been, and what she's doing, if that makes sense. Chapter 2 ends by showing us that Ruth continued to glean in Boaz's field until the harvest is over. So we can assume this resulted in them having enough food to live on for the next several months. We are set up to see lots of changes in the next chapter, in chapter 3. What is going to happen between Ruth and Boaz? Is anything going to happen? And you all know, if you've read this, that yes, something happens. Is Naomi going to continue the positive thinking, of, hey, this is the turnaround, people care? Or is she going to go back to the doom and gloom of, oh, well, I was just positive for one day. Tomorrow is just the same old, nobody cares about me. I still don't have a husband. So we're going to see if her attitude continues to change or her position in life continues to change. The next week, we will do the first 5 verses of chapter 3. And we will see what happens next in this story of Ruth. And I guess what I want us, the major thing, I guess there's 2 major things that I took away from just these verses 17 to 23 is, one, obviously, show kindness. You don't know what someone's going through. And whether it be a smile, whether it be a wave, whether it be a card in the mail, whether it be a text message, a Facebook message, whatever, just if you could just show some type of kindness, maybe just saying something nice about somebody, that goes a long way. And I read a story today, I don't know where it was, I don't know if it was on Facebook or what, but I read it where this person was saying, it was about along the kindness thing, and she was saying that there was this person at work that they never got along, was very hateful, very rude. And so she decided one day, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to say something nice to her. And so she did. And she said, you do that really well. And you're really good at that. And she said she kept doing that. And she saw the change in the other woman. The other woman became a little bit nicer. She kind of let her guard down. So kindness can go a long way. And like I said, when you're at the grocery store, you never know what the person in front of you has said to the cashier. You don't know what the cashier has went through. Maybe she's just lost someone. Maybe she is, having trouble with her job. Maybe she's on the verge of getting fired. There's a lot of things we don't know. We don't have to be in a workplace. Think about our next door neighbor. Like I've told you all several times, I don't know the backgrounds of my neighbors, and I struggle with that struggle going over and talking to them, but you never know what they're going through. And I have noticed that one of our neighbors will tell me, well, not feeling too good today. And then I feel kind of bad, like, oh, well, I probably should have checked on you a little bit more. You know, I see you out there, we say hi, we see you driving, we say hi. But, you know, on the days that he says, oh, well, I'm good today, then you're like, oh, okay. But then the days that he's like, oh, well, you know, I'm not feeling too good today. This is bothering me today, or that's been bothering me, or I've had trouble with this. It kind of takes me a step back. And I'm like, oh, you know, I haven't been as kind as I should have been. I should have been checking on him a little more. And that's just, like I said, a simple way of a simple hi. There's lots of things you can do. So I think that's the first thing to take away is be kind. Think of Boaz and maybe go the extra mile for somebody that you know that needs it. I'm not saying let people run all over you, but if you know someone's having a hard time, go the extra mile. Another thing is if you have children, and you don't have to have children, you can do it with your friends. Do you have that closeness of a relationship with someone that you truly care what happens to them? Like when Naomi came in, okay, Ruth, this is unusual. Why do you have all of this? What happened? How did you get all this? You know, do you have that person that you can truly care about, and you care about what happens to them, where they're going, what they're doing, you know, how they go about things. Sometimes someone just needs to know that someone cares about them. Like, hey, if I go do this and I hurt myself, there is someone who's going to care. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So, and again, like always, you know, we've talked about Naomi has been doom and gloom since chapter 1. And now it's turning around. And we talked about last week, you know, we may be doom and gloom for a year before things turn around. But just know that with God, things are going to turn around. May not be as fast as you want it to be, may not be when you want it to be. So just constantly think about Ruth and Naomi and the things they've done. And we'll see how this story progresses next week. I hope you all have a great week, and I will talk to you later. Or I will see you all next week. Sorry.